What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. After Sound here, bringing you Splinterlands content every single day. We also stream right here on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday morning, so come by and say hello. All right, well, we've been getting quite a few rule sets, or at least we got, I think, 4 new ones in the month of January, and that was on the back of like a couple that were released in December as well before the team went on break for the holiday. So I just thought I would, brainstorm some rule set ideas that I've been thinking of and share them here. And again, I'm not saying that they're perfect or great, and I'm very much open to them being massaged by the community, but I like the idea of, I like all the ideas that a lot of the community throws out. So I'm just throwing out a couple of my own to see what you guys think and maybe spark some ideas if the team is looking for new rule sets. So there's 4 of them. The last 2 are kind of related, but I'll start with what I think is, to me, one of the more important ones, or potentially more important ones. And that one is a rule set, and I don't know what to call it, so I don't have the names for it, but a rule set that essentially allows, the recharge ability. So right here, you have recharge. So a rule set that would allow the recharge ability to be able to be played every turn, right? So essentially, when you look at where the market is at, now some of these cards are actually quite popular, right, or powerful in my opinion, such as Uriel the Purifier. I really like. But when you look at like the legendaries, for example, you can see that Zyvax Vul, wow, look at Zyvax Vul, that price jumped. But either way, Zyvax Vul and Ifrit Rising are both at the bottom, right? And I think the market has somewhat determined that recharge is just okay at best. You really need a powerful monster like Uriel, who has a slew of other abilities, right? The self-heal, the flying, like in order to make it much more worthwhile. Also, Uriel's healing or self-heal doesn't go, every other turn. It still goes every turn, which I think is super valuable. And then if we look here, I think it's Suide Shaman, who's at the bottom of the barrel for the Rift Watcher rare cards because of, my guess would be recharge. So the rule set that I'm thinking of, and let's go back here. The rule set that I'm thinking of is if you make just a single game, right, so the rule set pops in where these monsters can attack every turn, it makes them super OP, but only for those turns, only for those battles. Again, what I'm liking about this, or what I would want the team to focus on, is finding ways to give utility to older cards. Now, they're doing that in a multitude of ways. So I'm not trying to say that they're not doing that. I think the team actually does a really good job about it. So I'm just giving my ideas here. But finding ways to give utility to cards that are generally, either slept on or disregarded by the community. So what I love, for example, with Astral Entity is, to me, that card makes, for example, Pelacor Deceiver, probably the worst of the Pelacors. I like it, but generally the market has determined that, it is the worst of the Pelacors by price or value, at least. It gives it a lot more value. And I've won a lot of games where nobody can touch Pelacor Deceiver because it gets the dodge along with backfire and flying, and it's amazing for any kind of non-magic games. So what I want to see, instead of making updates to the actual abilities themselves, right? So how they essentially buffed up Dispel, they buffed up, well, they didn't really buff up Oppress, but they buffed up Dispel, and then they nerfed Bloodlust and Martyr. And I think Scavenge is having a problem right now, but that should be fixed. But the point is that instead of trying to balance abilities out that way, just put rule sets in where these abilities would have much more value, right? So rather than changing the recharge ability, which I don't think they would do anyway, all it does is that allows the monster to attack for 3x damage every turn, and then all of a sudden people are reaching for those cards and realizing that, well, if this rule set comes up, I need to have a diverse collection that can include or should include these types of cards because these rule sets exist. So that's probably my favorite one, or at least the one that I would want to see most, just to give these cards, again, which I believe are generally slept on, a little bit more utility in game. The second ability, or the second rule set, is kind of the exact opposite of that. It would be a rule set that essentially negates Scattershot, right? So it's specifically focused on Scattershot monsters. So what am I trying to do with that? There's also already a rule set that gives everybody Scattershot, but a rule set that says Scattershot monsters no longer have scattershot, or let's just say scattershot is not allowed, right? In the same way that like armor is not allowed in certain rule sets, you can say scattershot is not allowed, sorry, not animals, but monsters with scattershot will not have that ability. Well, all of a sudden, let's actually go to scattershot here. Where is it? SSS. There it is. Now, all of a sudden, monsters with the scattershot ability, you would actually be able to use them in a very different way. Because I would say for the most part, right, I really like Chaos Dragon just because of how powerful Chaos Dragon is with scattershot because of that blast, and then it can just, wreak havoc anywhere. So Chaos Dragon is probably the exception, and I'm sure there's other, other solid monsters. I'm not saying that, these monsters are good or bad with scattershot. I'm just saying that if you give a rule set that removes the scattershot ability, well, all of a sudden, these monsters in that rule set can have a very designated purpose. You're not just throwing them in there to, get away from a taunt or whatever the case is, right? And maybe taunt then becomes much more popular in that type of rule set as well. So again, my point being is that like when you start tweaking abilities, not on the ability themselves, but tweaking balance, not on the abilities themselves, but turning them off or on in certain rule sets, the way that we have been, right, with a lot, right? Like Fog of War essentially negates sneak, opportunity, and snipe, right? So I would love to see more things like that. And again, these are just raw basic ideas. I'm sure you can come up with a bunch more based on all of the different abilities that are out there. But these are the two that I would like to see because, again, Portal Spinner, Acid Shooter, these cards aren't necessarily at the top of everybody's bargain list or at the top of everybody's like desired list. In fact, they're probably closer towards the bottom of the bin, right? Or on the bargain bin. So again, it's just finding ways to give utility to some of these other monsters where it's just like, okay, they have utility in regular games or standard matches, but if you do a game that has no scattershot allowed, how can I use Acid Shooter to my advantage, knowing that he's going to attack where I want him to attack, for example, right? So again, it just changes the meta. It sure complicates it a little bit, but at this point in time, I think everybody's enjoying a little bit more of a complicated meta within the game overall. Cool. Okay, so the final two that I have are mana related. Now, we already have a Little League where it's 4 mana and below. I've said this before, but I want to reiterate it now that we're getting a bunch of rule sets. I would love to see a JV or Junior Varsity. So not Little League, but Junior Varsity where we get 6 mana and below monsters that are allowed, nothing above that. And then, of course, on the flip side, I would love to see a Giants only. Now, are there a ton of Giants out there? Probably not. And what happens if you get a Giants only with like 13 mana or 14 mana? I mean, it would probably suck for some people. Some people may not even be able to play a card. So that one I can like leave, take it or leave it. But if they do implement a Giants only, I would want there to be some kind of thing in the code or like however they design it where it shouldn't be under 20 mana, right? It should give you an opportunity to play some of these Giants. And with Rift Watchers out there, with the Giants that we have in Chaos Legion, some of these new Soulbound reward cards, I think that there's a lot of opportunities for us to have fun with that, right? Again, could it be boring? Sure. But again, I was just thinking from a mana perspective, Little League is actually fun. JV would be cool to kind of have that same restriction but with extra cards, and then if you want to go big you can do a Giants only type of match. So those are my ideas. Again, just putting it out there. If you guys have ideas too, we can compile some here and then maybe get someone from the team to take a look. I don't even know who's in charge of creating the rule sets, but community's always got some great ideas. So I am very curious to know what it is you guys would have in mind. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll catch you all in the next video and see you around the game. Take care.